Dinner was loud that night, plates clinking, laughter echoing, but none of it included me. My mother's voice cut through the noise like glass. Everyone, raise your glass to Ryan, our new business owner. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. Applause filled the dining room. My younger brother soaked it up, smiling like a movie star. He'd failed 3 ventures already, but somehow this one made him the hero again. I stayed quiet, pushing cold pasta around my plate. Mom noticed, of course. She always did when I wasn't performing my good daughter act. You could try being happy for him, Claire, she said sweetly, with that tone that wasn't sweet at all. I looked up. I am happy. I just didn't realize selling Dad's old truck counted as starting a business. Ryan chuckled, leaning back. Jealousy doesn't look good on you, sis. Dad sighed, setting down his fork. Enough. We'll talk after dinner. That sentence hit me like a gut punch. We'll talk was never good news. After dinner, they called me into the living room. The TV glowed quietly in the background. Mom folded her arms, her expression set. Claire, your brother's fiancé is moving in. They'll need space. I frowned. Okay, there's a guest room. Ryan smirked. Not big enough. They'll be taking your room. The words hit like a slap. My room? Dad didn't meet my eyes. You're 25, Claire. It's time to be independent. You can stay at a friend's for now until you get your own place. I let out a shaky laugh. After everything I've done for this house? For you? Mom tilted her head. You've always been dramatic. This is about family progress. Don't make it harder than it is. Ryan's grin widened. Come on, Claire. You've always wanted to move out. We're helping you take that step. My throat tightened, but I swallowed the pain.
Right.
Helping me? I didn't argue. Not anymore. I just walked upstairs, each step heavier than the last. My walls still had the faint drawings I made in high school, the postcards I'd taped above my desk, tiny pieces of a life I thought mattered. I packed everything in silence.
Clothes. Books.
The photo of Grandpa Henry that always sat by my bed. The one person who ever told me I was capable of more. When I rolled my suitcase down the stairs, Mom didn't look up from her phone. Dad stood at the window, pretending to adjust the blinds. Ryan called out, "Don't forget to lock up on your way out." The front door clicked shut behind me, and for the first time, the night air felt like freedom and heartbreak all at once. I crashed at my best friend's place, Lena's apartment above a bakery. She handed me a blanket and whispered, "You can stay here as long as you need." I smiled weakly. Thanks, but I'll figure something out. I always do. But the truth was, I was tired of figuring things out. Tired of pretending I wasn't hurt. The next morning, sunlight poured through Lena's tiny window. I was making coffee when she suddenly froze by the blinds. "Claire, there's a car outside your parents' house." My heart skipped. "What kind of car?" "Black. Expensive. Looks like a chauffeur car." I walked over. Even from across the street, I recognized it instantly. The old black Lincoln my grandfather Henry used to drive himself everywhere. He hadn't visited in years, not since he'd cut off my parents after they tried to manage his estate. Lena's jaw dropped. "Is that your grandpa?" Outside, the door opened. Grandpa Henry stepped out slowly, cane in hand, his sharp blue eyes fixed on the house. The air seemed to shift with him, like authority had just walked back into the neighborhood. He slammed the cane against the ground, once, twice. My dad appeared at the door in his robe, startled. "Henry," Dad stammered, "this is—" "Where's Claire?" Grandpa's voice thundered. Mom rushed out, trying to play polite. "Dad, what's going on?" "We didn't expect—" He cut her off, his tone icy. "No, you didn't. Because you thought I wouldn't find out what you did." Ryan peeked out from behind them, smirking nervously. "Morning, Grandpa." "Quiet," Henry snapped. "I'm here for one reason. It's time to see who this house really belongs to." Lena covered her mouth. "Holy Claire, what is he talking about?" I stood frozen at the window, heart pounding, tears burning behind my eyes. Because I had no idea what was happening. But something deep inside me whispered. This time, I wasn't the one being thrown out. This time, someone else was about to lose everything. The sun hadn't fully risen when Grandpa Henry's voice shattered the calm of the neighborhood. David Bennett, come outside. From Lena's window, I watched in disbelief as my father stepped onto the porch, robe tied loosely, confusion written all over his face. My mother appeared behind him, clutching her coffee mug like a shield. Ryan stumbled out next, half-dressed, eyes still groggy from sleep. Grandpa's cane hit the driveway again.
Thud. Thud.
You've forgotten where this home came from, haven't you? His voice carried a weight that made even the neighbors peek out from their blinds. Dad forced a smile. Henry, you can't just show up and start yelling in the street. People are watching. Good, Grandpa said coldly. Let them. He handed his driver a leather briefcase, then looked straight at my mother. Marilyn, do you remember when you begged me for a loan 20 years ago? I gave it to you under one condition. The property stays in my name until your children are old enough to manage it responsibly. Mom's fake composure cracked. That was ages ago, Dad. You said. I said nothing that allowed you to evict my granddaughter, he snapped. Where is she? Ryan muttered. She left. She wanted to. Grandpa's eyes narrowed. Is that what you told yourselves to sleep better? He turned to the driver. Open it. The driver clicked open the briefcase, revealing thick folders stamped with legal seals. Grandpa pulled out a document and slapped it onto the hood of the car. This is the deed to the Bennett property, he declared, voice rising. And it's not under your names. Never was. The trust lists Claire Bennett as the sole beneficiary. The silence that followed was suffocating. Mom's mug slipped from her hands, coffee splattering across the steps. That's impossible, she whispered. Dad's face went pale. You can't do this. She's irresponsible. She doesn't know how to handle money. Enough. Grandpa's cane hit the ground so hard the sound echoed. You've used her kindness as an excuse for your greed long enough. I could barely breathe. My hand covered my mouth as tears welled in my eyes. Lena gripped my arm. Claire, that house, it's yours. Down below, Mom tried to regain control. Dad, please, this isn't the way. We were only trying to help Ryan start his life. Grandpa turned to Ryan, his voice colder than winter steel. And how many starts has he had? 3? 4? Each one funded by the sister you call a burden. Ryan's jaw clenched. You don't understand, Grandpa. I understand perfectly, Henry said. And I'm done watching you drain what isn't yours. He looked back at my father. You taught your daughter she didn't belong in her own home. Well, now she does. Legally, fully, and permanently. Dad's face hardened with disbelief. You're ruining this family. No, Grandpa said, his tone softening slightly. I'm saving what's left of it. He turned toward the black car and nodded to the driver. Fetch her. My heart stopped.
Lena looked at me.
Claire, he means you. I backed away from the window, trembling. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Come outside, sweetheart. It's time you come home. Grandpa. I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. Everything I'd lost last night was suddenly being handed back, but not as charity, as justice. I grabbed my jacket, tears streaming freely now. Lena smiled through hers. Go get what's yours. Outside, the morning light felt warmer than it ever had. The black car door opened, and Grandpa Henry extended his hand toward me with a proud, steady smile. Let's go show them, Claire, he said quietly, who this house really belongs to. And as I took his hand, I knew the reckoning had only just begun. The black car rolled down the familiar street, and my heart pounded so loud it drowned out the hum of the engine. Every window we passed reflected flashes of the house I'd once called home, each reflection reminding me of the night I left with nothing but a suitcase and my pride. Grandpa Henry sat beside me, calm but unreadable. You don't need to say a word, he said. Just walk in with your head high. They need to see what dignity looks like. As the car stopped, I took a deep breath. My fingers trembled, but my spine straightened. When the door opened, sunlight hit me full in the face, bright, sharp, and blinding, like a second chance. The front door was open. My parents and Ryan were standing there, frozen in disbelief. My mother's lips parted, but no sound came out. Dad's eyes flicked from me to Grandpa, as if hoping this was a nightmare he could wake up from. Grandpa stepped out first, his cane striking the driveway like punctuation. "Well," he said, voice ringing, "I believe introductions aren't necessary. You all remember your daughter." Ryan muttered, "Unbelievable." I met his eyes, calm and steady. "Good morning, Ryan. How's the room?" His face twisted, but he didn't answer. Grandpa motioned toward the door. "Claire, go on inside." I hesitated. My hands shook slightly as I crossed the threshold, the same doorway I'd once been told to leave through. Every memory flooded back. Birthday candles, Christmas mornings, tears, laughter, and betrayal. The air inside felt heavier than I remembered. My old photograph still hung on the wall, but someone had replaced my framed college diploma with a painting of Ryan and his fiancée. "Cozy, isn't it?" I said softly, letting the sarcasm slip through. Mom straightened her blouse, trying to reclaim her tone of control. "Claire, we never meant to hurt you. Things just got convenient for you," I interrupted. Dad raised his voice. "Watch your tone. This is still my house." Grandpa turned sharply. "No, David, it's not." The lawyer, a tall man in his 40s, stepped inside holding a folder. "Mr. Bennett," he said, addressing Grandpa respectfully, "all transfer documents are in order. The deed and estate titles are confirmed under Miss Claire Bennett's name." My parents' faces drained of color. Grandpa looked at me with pride. "It's official. This property, and everything tied to it, now belongs to you." Mom stumbled a step backward, whispering, "You can't do this after all we've done." I turned to her. "You mean after all I've done? Paying your bills, covering your mistakes, being your scapegoat." Her eyes filled with tears, but it was too late. Ryan tried to cut in. "Claire, you're not going to kick us out, are you?" I looked at him for a long moment. "You kicked me out first." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Grandpa's cane tapped once. "Claire, the choice is yours. You can decide what happens next." For a second, the idea of revenge burned in me. I could throw them out, make them feel the sting I'd lived with for years. But as I looked around that house, all I saw was emptiness. No love, no warmth, just people clinging to walls that never meant what they thought they did. I took a deep breath. "You can stay," I said finally, "but not because you deserve it, because I'm not you." Dad's mouth opened, but no words came. Grandpa smiled faintly. "That's my girl." I turned to leave, the morning sun pouring through the door behind me. "Enjoy the house," I said quietly. "It's not the walls that make it a home, it's the people. Try being some." And as I stepped back into the sunlight, the wind brushed against my face like freedom. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the forgotten one. I felt like the one who finally walked away with everything that truly mattered. 2 days passed, and the entire town knew. News traveled faster than I ever imagined, how the perfect Bennett family had thrown out their daughter, only for her to return as the legal owner of their home. I never posted anything. I didn't need to. The truth had a way of spreading on its own. That morning, I met Grandpa Henry outside the courthouse cafe. The autumn air carried the scent of roasted coffee and burnt leaves. He sat by the window, reading a newspaper with a headline, "Local heiress takes back family estate." I smiled faintly as I slid into the seat across from him. I didn't expect it to make headlines. He looked up with a smirk. "When justice shows up wearing your face, people talk." I laughed softly, but there was still a heaviness in my chest. "I didn't want revenge, Grandpa. I just wanted peace." "And that's exactly why you got it," he said. "You didn't let anger decide for you." We sat in silence for a moment before I asked, "What happens to them now?" He took a sip of his coffee. "They'll have to live with the truth, And with you as the legal owner, they'll finally see what humility feels like. Later that afternoon, I drove back to the house, not to gloat, but to close a chapter. The driveway felt different now, like it recognized me. Ryan was outside, pacing on the porch, phone pressed to his ear. "No, we can't afford another delay. Just handle it," he barked before slamming his phone down. When he saw me, he froze. "Claire." His voice cracked, a mix of shame and desperation. "Listen, I know things got out of hand. Maybe we can talk." I shook my head gently. "There's nothing to talk about. I'm not here to humiliate you, Ryan. I'm here to move forward." He looked down, jaw tight. For once, he didn't have a comeback. Inside, Mom was cleaning the kitchen in silence while Dad sat on the couch, staring blankly at the floor. They looked smaller somehow, like the arrogance had drained out of them, leaving only regret. Mom finally spoke, her voice low. "We never thought it would go this far. We just wanted to help Ryan." "You wanted control," I said quietly. "You wanted to choose who mattered."
And it was never me.
Dad's eyes met mine. For the first time, they weren't filled with authority. They were heavy with guilt. "We were wrong, Claire. About everything." I stood there, the weight of years pressing down and then finally lifting. "I don't hate you," I said. "But I can't live here anymore. This house means nothing to me now." Mom's lip trembled. "So what will you do?" I smiled faintly.
Live.
"On my own terms." As I turned to leave, Grandpa Henry's car pulled up again. He stepped out, cane in hand, watching with pride as I locked the front door, this time from the outside, by choice. "Ready?" he asked. "More than ever," I replied. We drove away, while the afternoon light bathed the house in gold. In the rear-view mirror, it looked peaceful, almost like it had finally exhaled. Grandpa rested his hand over mine. "You know, Claire, sometimes losing everything is how you discover who you really are." I looked out the window at the endless stretch of open road. "And sometimes," I said softly, "it's how you remember you never needed any of it." He smiled. "That's my granddaughter." The wind rushed through the open window, carrying away every last echo of that house, every insult, every tear, every moment I'd felt small. Now, all that remained was silence. But it wasn't empty anymore. It was peace. Real, earned peace. And as the city lights appeared on the horizon, I knew this time. I wasn't leaving because I had to. I was leaving because I finally could. "Wait, you're still applying?" My brother's voice sliced through the air, his smirk loud even when his mouth wasn't. His fingers flew over the keyboard of my laptop, faster than I could react. Before I could move, the screen blinked. My inbox emptied. He spun the screen toward me. "All gone," he said. "Guess the deadline won't matter now." Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. I stood frozen. My heart dropped to the floor. I had 3 scholarship applications left to submit. 1 week before final cutoff. Months of effort. Personal essays. Financial forms. Gone in 3 clicks. You deleted them? My voice cracked. I couldn't breathe. "Don't be dramatic, Haley," he chuckled, leaning back in the chair like he just did something funny. "It's not like you were getting in anyway." My mom stood in the doorway, arms crossed, towel in hand. She'd heard it.
She saw it.
But instead of scolding him, she laughed. "Oh, sweetie," she said, wiping her hands, "you're too sensitive for college anyway. You'd cry the first time a professor raised his voice." My dad, who hadn't looked up from the sports channel in hours, just gave a lazy shrug. "It'll hurt less later," he muttered. "Better now than when the rejection letters roll in." They thought they were doing me a favor. A mercy kill. They didn't know what they'd just started. That night, I locked my door. I couldn't stop shaking. I stared at the empty screen, and the echo of their voices kept playing in my ears. "You're too sensitive. You won't make it. You weren't going anywhere." They didn't know I'd backed everything up to a drive. A hidden one. They didn't know I'd handwritten every essay, revised it 10 times, burned through pens like cigarettes. And they definitely didn't know I had something bigger in mind than just scholarships. I wasn't just applying to college. I was planning my escape. At school the next morning, I didn't speak to anyone. I sat alone, eyes locked on my screen. I retyped the entire application for the Fulbright Swanston Future Leaders Scholarship from scratch. I stayed after hours. Hid in the library when the janitors swept the floors. Slept 4 hours a night. On Friday, I waited until everyone was asleep. Then I walked to the gas station 2 miles away to print the recommendation letters. I bought a coffee. Sent in all 3 scholarship apps at 2:36 a.m. from the clerk's Wi-Fi. 2 weeks passed. No one noticed I was gone longer. No one asked where I was. But the principal called me into the office. He handed me a large envelope. His eyebrows raised. "Haley, this came certified." Inside it, a gold seal. Future Leaders Scholarship. Full tuition. A hand-signed letter. "Dear Ms. Haley Brooks, your essay moved our entire panel. We're not just awarding you the scholarship. We'd like you to give the opening speech at the Future Women in Tech Conference in Boston next month." When I got home, my brother was back at the kitchen table, laughing over some dumb TikTok with his friends. My mom was in the living room, painting her nails. My dad was asleep on the couch. No one noticed I was glowing.
Not yet.
Because I hadn't told them what was coming. Not yet. But they were about to find out. And they wouldn't be laughing for long. It started with a package on the porch. A thick one. Heavy. My mom thought it was another one of her candle sets. She tore it open, only to freeze when she saw the letter on top. Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Full ride. 5-year research grant. Housing covered. First flight leaves in 2 weeks. MIT? My mom whispered, almost like it hurt to say. I walked in from the backyard, dirt on my hands. I'd been fixing up the old bike I planned to sell for extra cash. She turned to me like I'd committed a crime. "You applied to MIT?" I didn't answer. I walked right past her, into the kitchen. My brother looked up from his cereal, then squinted at the letter. You got into MIT?
How?
Must have been a mistake, my dad muttered, still half asleep. No way someone like her. She got a scholarship too, my mom said, flipping through the packet with trembling hands. Everything's paid. She's leaving. The silence in that kitchen was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. I stood there and let it soak in. Every insult, every laugh, every time they said I couldn't. Now they had to swallow it. My brother looked like someone had punched him. "You didn't even tell us you were applying." "You deleted the emails," I said, finally locking eyes with him. "Remember?" He went pale. I didn't think, it was a joke. "No," I said. "It wasn't. It was a warning. But you were too stupid to realize it." That night, I packed my things. Quietly. No tears. No drama. Just box after box of my future being sealed and labeled while the house that hated me stayed quiet. Mom hovered near my door once. "It's not that we didn't believe in you, Haley. It's just, you're not like the other girls who succeed." I zipped my suitcase shut. "You're right," I said softly. "I'm not." They were supported. I had to become fire to survive. She blinked. "I didn't mean." "Yes, you did." I cut in. "And that's why I'm done letting you shape me." The airport smelled like hope. I'd never flown before. Never even stepped inside a terminal. But as I watched the plane pull in, I realized something deep in my bones. They clipped my wings for years. And I still managed to fly. I landed in Boston with nothing but one suitcase, a laptop, and my name. But I had more than enough. They placed me in a dorm with 3 other women in STEM. All first-gen scholars. All brilliant. All survivors. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a mistake. I felt possible. I gave my speech at the Future Women in Tech Conference in front of 400 people. When I mentioned that my own family called me too sensitive for college, the room gasped. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. The truth was already heavier than vengeance. But then something happened I didn't expect. A recruiter from a top AI firm approached me after. She shook my hand and said, "I want you in our mentorship pipeline. People like you? You're why we're building the future." I hadn't planned on going back home. But life has a way of testing you the moment you start to heal. A month into my semester, I got a call from Principal Marks back at my old high school. He asked if I could speak at their upcoming Scholarship Awareness Day. Apparently, my story had gone viral in an education blog. "You'd be the perfect inspiration for the students who feel overlooked," he said. I hesitated. The last time I walked those halls, I was invisible. But something inside me whispered, "Go back. Let them see what they tried to bury." When I landed in my hometown for the 2-day visit, I didn't tell my family. I stayed with Miss Turner, my old English teacher. She was the only one who ever saw more in me than silence. She opened the door and wrapped me in the kind of hug I forgot existed. "You made it," she whispered. "I knew you would." I wanted to cry, but I'd shed enough tears in that house already. The next morning, I stood behind the auditorium curtain, looking out at a crowd of students. I spotted faces just like mine used to be, quiet, guarded, waiting for someone to say they mattered. And I told them everything. Not the polished version. The real one. How I'd applied in secret. How my brother sabotaged me. How my mother laughed. How I applied anyway. How I left. And how I never came back to be liked. I didn't mention names. But the truth was louder than that. I spoke for every girl whose dreams were mocked at the dinner table. For every kid whose family told them, "Dream smaller. Stay in your lane." The room gave me a standing ovation. Even the teachers were wiping their eyes. But the moment I stepped outside, she was there. My mom, holding her purse like it was a weapon, standing beside my brother, who wore that same smug face he always did when he thought he had the upper hand. "You spoke like we were the enemy," she said sharply. "What happened to family?" I looked her dead in the eye. "You don't get to use that word. Family doesn't delete your future and call it just joking." "You think you're better than us now?" my brother snapped. "No," I said calmly. "I know I am." They didn't expect that. They expected the same quiet girl who walked on eggshells and begged for scraps of affection. But she died the day they laughed at my dreams. That night, Miss Turner and I stayed up late. She pulled out a dusty binder of all my old essays, ones I forgot even writing. "You always had it," she said. "They just tried to smother it." I left the next morning without saying goodbye to my family. There was nothing left to say. Back in Boston, I started a vlog series called "No One Believed in Me." Each week, I featured a different woman from a difficult background who made it to college, tech, leadership, or entrepreneurship. The channel blew up. Thousands of comments, millions of views, and one message stood out. From a girl in Ohio. "My dad burned my college essays last week, but after watching your story, I rewrote them. Thank you for saving me." I stared at that comment for a long time. Then I smiled. I didn't just escape. I'd become the lifeline I never had. By the end of sophomore year, everything changed. I was selected to co-lead a research team at MIT focusing on low-cost, high-impact AI for public school systems, specifically designed for underfunded districts. The project got picked up by a national education nonprofit. Suddenly, I wasn't just the girl who got out. I was the girl bringing change back in. One afternoon, I got a call from a New York journalist. They were doing a feature titled "From Ignored to Icon" on first-gen women in STEM. They wanted me on the cover. "Your background, it's gripping," the editor said. "You were erased in your own home, and now you're rewriting the whole script." That line stuck with me. I was rewriting it. Not just for me, but for every girl they said wouldn't make it. I flew to New York for the shoot. The stylist handed me a slate gray suit, sharp, clean, nothing too flashy. But I reached for the deep burgundy instead. Bold.
Fierce.
Unapologetic. I'd spent too many years muted. The article went viral. My inbox flooded with speaking invites.
Podcasts.
Panels. Universities. But one message hit different. It was from my high school. From the same counselor who once said, maybe college isn't for everyone, some people are just better suited to, simpler paths. Now, she wanted me to keynote the graduation. She ended her email with, "Our students could really benefit from someone like you."
Someone like me.
I didn't reply.
Not yet.
Weeks later, I was walking across campus, sipping burnt coffee, when my phone buzzed. It was a number I hadn't saved.
Mom.
I froze, stared at the screen. For a second, my breath caught in my chest. I hadn't heard her voice in over a year. I let it ring, and ring, and ring. Then I answered. "Haley," she said, like the name burned. "We saw the magazine. It's everywhere." Silence. Then, "We're proud of you." A pause. Then the kicker. "Your brother is trying to apply for a business loan. Do you think you could maybe help?" I smiled without joy. "You mean the same brother who deleted my future?" "He didn't mean it." "He did," I said coldly. "And you laughed." More silence. "We're still your family, Haley." "No," I said softly. "Family is who stands with you when no one's watching, not who only shows up when the cameras do."
Click.
I didn't block her. I didn't need to. Because that conversation didn't hurt anymore. Not like before. Now it just felt like confirmation. I'd grown out of the cage they kept me in. A week later, I accepted the graduation keynote. I stood on the same stage where I once sat invisible, and I looked out at every student with that same quiet fire I once had in my chest. Then I said the words no one had said to me. "You were never meant to be small. You were only raised by people who feared your size." The day my speech went live, it hit 1 million views in under 24 hours. I hadn't expected that. Thousands of messages poured in. Students who were told they weren't smart enough. Girls who were mocked for being too emotional. Kids who had to hide their dreams because their homes were war zones of insecurity and ego. But there was one message that brought me to tears. "I was going to drop out tomorrow. But then I watched your speech. I stayed. I just needed one reason. You gave me 10. I sat on the floor of my dorm room and sobbed into my hoodie. Not because I was sad, but because that girl was me just 2 years ago. I started a nonprofit the following semester. Project Ember. Its mission was simple. Identify high-potential, low-income students with little support. Offer them scholarships, mentorship, application help, and tech training. Build the latter I never had. In 1 year, we helped over 300 students get into schools like Yale, Berkeley, NYU, and Spelman. Guess what? The first girl we funded? She came from my hometown. She'd been told she was too quiet to lead. Now she was a freshman at Stanford with a full ride. As for me, I graduated at the top of my class, spoke at the National Education Summit, got offered a policy role in Washington, building digital access for underserved communities. But the biggest shock came on a random Tuesday. A man in a sharp navy suit showed up at our MIT office. He was from the Board of Higher Education Affairs. He handed me a plaque. "Your work has changed thousands of lives," he said. "You've redefined what it means to overcome." The plaque read, "To Haley Brooks, the girl who refused to stay small." Years later, I bought a small house near Boston. Quiet street. Big windows. Books everywhere. One day, while planting daffodils in my front yard, a sleek silver car pulled up. Out stepped my mother. Hair shorter now. Eyes older. No makeup. Just raw. She didn't speak at first. Just held out a photo. Me, at 5 years old. Sitting on a swing. Grinning. Dirt on my cheeks. "You always looked like you wanted to fly away," she said quietly. I stayed still. "I was wrong, Haley. About everything." She tried to hand me the photo. I looked at it. Then her. "I'm not 5 anymore," I said softly. "And I didn't just fly away. I learned to soar. Without you." I walked back inside. Left the door open behind me. Some people never change. But some people learn. And some people, they become everything they were told they couldn't. I wasn't the quiet girl anymore. I was a builder. A fire starter. A damn revolution in sneakers, and a dream. And the best part? I was just getting started. If the story hits you even a little, just hit that like button. It helps more than you think. Don't forget to subscribe if you've ever felt this kind of pain. You're not alone.